Hi there. Thanks for joining me for this video. Some time ago, I picked up a Zoom Q2n 4K camera, and I've been using it to capture video of myself performing at acoustic jams, open mics, the local coffee shop, and at home. It's a great little camera for that purpose. When it's a standalone camera, you can choose a resolution all the way up to 4K, and the sound that it can pick up is quite good. It's got built-in microphones that surpass your cell phone capabilities and just about all the other cameras on the market. It's even got an external mic input so that you can surpass the built-in microphones. But one thing I didn't know about this camera was that you can also use it as a webcam. You can live stream, you can do Zoom conferences, you can capture video on your computer instead of on board the camera. So when you use it though as a webcam, you're limited to 720p for resolution. Well, that's okay. Most cameras are much better than that though. But as it turns out, at the Zoom website, you can get a firmware update, which if you install it into the camera, you can now get 1080p, which is much better than 720p. It's more on par with all of the other webcams out there. A lot of people are getting into 4K though, but I don't think we'll see that with this camera. 1080p is likely going to be the ceiling for this camera. Anyway, there's a firmware update that we can get that allows us to use a higher resolution. And I'm going to, in this video, find out what the firmware is currently in the camera. We'll go to the website, we'll download it, we'll install it into the camera, activate it, and let it run its routine. And afterwards, we will see if the 1080p resolution is that much better than the current resolution. Now that's what you're looking at right now. This is 720p straight out of the camera. So at the end of this video, we will be looking at the same setup, the same configuration. I'll have everything set up the same way, but it will be in 1080p. And we'll see how much better it actually is. So let's just reconfigure everything. We will get on with it and see what this camera can do. This is the Zoom Q2n 4K camera. Please note Q2n, and over here on this side a stamp saying 4K. There is a camera, the original version of the Q2n, that was not 4K. It looks exactly the same, but it does not have the stamp that says 4K on this side. If you have a non-4K camera, do not install the firmware that updates the 4K camera. You will probably end up causing more harm than good. So if you have the 4K camera, the way to find out what firmware is currently in your camera, all you need to do is turn on the power and watch the screen as it starts up. And right here, I can see version 1.1. What that means is I have to do the firmware update. Okay, so here we are now at the desktop on the computer, and I'm already at a Google web page. I'm just going to type in a search for the Q2n 4K firmware update. But before we go there, you really should understand that there are two versions of this Q2n camera. There is the 4K version, which I have, and there is the non-4K version, which maybe that's what you have. And if you have the non-4K version, you should not use this firmware. Don't install it. It may mess up your camera. It might not work at all. You will probably have to take extra steps to make it work again if you install the wrong software. So make sure that you're using the Q2n 4K version of the camera. At any rate, here at Google, I'm just going to put in Q2n 4K firmware and enter, of course. And here we go at the very top of the list, zoomcore.com. That is Zoom's website for North America. I don't know about other continents. Let's click on that, and it will take me to this page. Click here to change my language. No, I don't need to do that. So let's look at the page. I'm going to scroll down just a little bit, and right there, System 2.0 for the Q2n 4K has been released. This update includes the following: added new function that enables the user to select 1080p resolution when you're using it as a web camera. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. So let's just go ahead and click on that firmware version right there. Again, it takes you to this option to change my language. I don't need to do that. So here you go. This is the page with all of the software for a Zoom Q2n camera, the 4K version. Right here, firmware. I don't need the drivers or the handy share for the Mac or the Windows. I don't need the documentation. You can get it if you wish. I'll have a look at them later and see what other things are available for the Q2n 4K. Right now, I'm after this one. So let's click on it. Right away, a little download window opens up and it says completed. The Q2n 4K version 2.01. So it's actually a little bit newer than what I was expecting. So take note, this is a zip file. This is not what I'm going to put into the camera. This is a zip file. It's a compressed folder that basically what happens is they put all the files into a folder, then they put that folder into a zip program that compresses it to a smaller format so that you can download a smaller version of a file that saves you data. What you have to do is open that zip folder. Inside will be another folder that is going to be containing all of the files that we need. So at any rate, the download is done. Let's close this window and go to the Windows desktop. So here we are, and if I look in my downloads folder, here it is. That's where it went, into downloads, and there it is, Q2n 4K version 2.01. And yes, right there it says compressed folder. So again, don't transfer that into the camera. I'm just going to double click on it. Effectively, that unzips it. And now I have a folder inside that is no longer zipped. And I'm going to look inside this folder. And inside of that is a bin file and a couple of PDF files. So these PDF files, there's an update guide to tell you how to do it, and there's a firmware version history that tells you about all of the upgrades and what they did along the way. Well, you don't put those PDFs into your camera either. You read those. All I want is that bin file right here, Q2n 4K FW. I'm going to copy this over to my desktop. Just drag and drop, let go, copy there. And instantly it's there. It's not a very big file. This is the file that I'm going to put into my Q2n 4K camera. Now I can't really do that right now because I'm currently using my Q2n as a webcam to make this video. So what I have to do is stop the camera. I'm going to restart it as a card reading device, and that will allow me to access the Q2n for file transfers. But you won't be able to see the video while I'm doing that. I'll show you here on the desktop though, so you don't lose your place. I'll just be off the screen personally. So here we go. I'm just going to pause you right here, and I'll restart you in a different mode. Okay, here now I have stopped my camera and I rebooted it as a storage device reader. I'll show you how to do that later on, but for now I'm now able to access my Q2n on my computer as an external drive, and I can see it on this side right here. Clicking on it once, this now is what is inside my Q2n. Well, I want to transfer this firmware file into this root directory of the camera. So doing that, I can just right-click hold the mouse button down, I can drag it over to here. I can let it go on top of that icon, or I can drag it here into this area. Don't put it inside that DCIM folder. You need to put it in the root directory. I'm going to copy right there, and now it's already done. The Q2n 4K firmware is now in my Q2n 4K camera. So that being done, I no longer need this one on my desktop. I might as well just delete it. It can be gone. It doesn't matter anymore. I still have it currently in my downloads folder, in the zip folder that I originally downloaded. I don't even need that anymore, so I could just delete that. It can be gone. If I need it again, I can just go back to the website and pick it up. Right now, all I need is that. So I'm going to now show you how to make it update the camera. Well, I have to use a different camera to show you this part because you won't be able to use the Q2n while you're doing this. So I'm going to reconfigure my setup and I'll be right back. So here we go. I've determined that my camera was version 1.1 firmware. So I'm going to do the firmware update. I've already installed the firmware update file in this camera. And the way to activate that software, you just hold down this record button while you press that power button. And as it starts up, it'll say firmware update from version 1.1 to version 2.01. Press the record button for yes. Am I sure? Yes. So now there's no going back. It's going to go through its routine. And it is already done. Please power off. So let's turn it off. And when I restart, we will see whether the resolution has drastically increased or not. My guess is it will be considerably better. Okay, so now I've installed the firmware update to version 2.01. But when I went and reconnected to OBS, my software of choice, I was still getting 720p. So I had to learn a little bit more to find out what is going on. And let me show you what happens. Once you've installed the firmware update, turn on the power, and you'll see version 2.01 is now the firmware version in this camera. So the firmware installed properly. Well, as it turns out, I can press the X button when I'm in camera mode, regular standalone camera mode, and that takes me to this menu that I seldom go to. NTSC or PAL for Europe. You can change a couple of system settings, and there's a little arrow right here to go to some more choices. One of them being webcam. So I'm going to press the button beside webcam, and I can see now that I can choose between 720p or 1080p. So I'm going to choose 1080p, and it takes me to this screen. If I press X to say no to starting the webcam, it will cancel that change and go back to whatever it was before. So I'm going to say yes, start the webcam in 1080p, even though my USB is not currently connected to the camera. So let's just power it off, and I'm going to show you one more thing. When your USB is plugged into the camera, when it's off, now you turn the power on now, you're going to get some different options. So I have now the choice of going to webcam or card reader, and that's what you need when you transfer the update file into the camera. If I don't use this feature, I have to take the SD card out of the camera, put it in the computer, put the file on it, and then put the SD card, the micro SD, back into the camera. That's kind of tedious. So just go to card reader mode, USB, and transfer the file into the camera. And then power down and go through the process I just showed you. The other option, webcam, I can see a tiny little 720p right here. And if I go one more, it's 1080p. So I can actually choose right here the resolution that I want. And it's almost always going to be 1080p. The next option is to be able to use the camera just as a USB microphone only, no camera. Well, there might be times when I want to do that. At any rate, I want to start it as a web camera in 1080p. Start the webcam? Yes. So that is all there was to it. Now I'm going to set everything up the way I had it the first place, and we can compare the video from when I started this video to what it is now. Okay, here we are back at the original configuration with the camera set up like it was before, but now I am using 1080p. And so I think the resolution is quite a bit better. It's not ridiculously better, but it's noticeably better. So I think we did achieve something. Well, let's just for reference flip back momentarily to 720p, and then we'll come back. This is 720p, and if you look at the strings on the guitars around me and the bass, take a look at the headstock, the label on the headstock. It says Washburn, but I think it's probably harder to read because of a little bit of graininess. We're going to switch back now to 1080p, and those things should be quite a bit clearer in 5, 4, 2, 1. Okay, so now I'm back at 1080p. Have a look again at the strings on the bass and the guitars, the headstock. See if you can read it says Washburn, like I said. It might be a bit clearer now, but it might give you some idea of how much better detail is in there. It might still not be quite so readable, but you should be able to see that the lines are better. There's some parallaxing of lines where things are not perpendicular as they should be, but that's because of the proximity of the camera to me. It's very close to me now, where I couldn't do that before and get a decent image. Anyway, have a look at these images, watch the video again. I think it's pretty clear how to do a firmware update now, and if you have one of these cameras, the 4K version, go ahead and do a firmware update. Don't be afraid. It's easy to do, and you really can't go wrong if you unzip those files and just put the bin file in the camera, and then it'll be done in 2 seconds. Anyway, if this has been any help to you at all, I would love it if you hit like and subscribe. That lets me know that it's worthwhile to make these videos, and I can make more if anybody out there is interested. Leave a comment below if you wish, and let me know, did you like this video? Did you gain anything? Do you have a question? Maybe you have a suggestion to make videos better than this. Anyway, I'll talk to you again hopefully very soon. Have a great day. Bye now.